Hello, I'm Father John Jenkins, President of the University of Notre Dame, and thank you for watching Shamrock Sports.
Welcome to Shamrock Sports, everyone. On the second floor of the Duncan Student Center in our NDTV studios, Austin Rooney, John Horlander, Johnny Soper. Happy that you could be with us as we recap the Navy game and get you set for the Northwestern game. Big weekend for the Fighting Irish. What did we learn last weekend with the Navy game?
Notre Dame's playing well consistently. They're looking good headed towards the college football playoff.
Brian Kelly has only had 2 undefeated Novembers. He needs to make it 3 if they want to make the college football playoff.
Notre Dame has got a tough road test ahead. Just the second time they've played Northwestern in the last 22 years. Shamrock Sports starts right now. Welcome back upstairs, second floor Duncan Student Center. Well, 44-22, win over Navy. The Navy game is over.
I can sleep easy now.
Are you happy?
I've had many a sleepless night this football season.
Tell me what your least favorite part of the Notre Dame Navy game is.
The amount of injuries, really. You saw Drew Tranquil go out early in that game. You saw Alize Mack go out with a concussion. He won't be playing this week. Asmir Bilal spent a lot of time down. He missed a series. Claypool missed a couple of plays with an ankle injury. It's just a very tough physical game for the Irish, and I'm glad to move past it. Hopefully, we don't have a Navy hangover.
Okay, quick follow-up. Why do you hate the Naval Academy?
I don't hate the Naval Academy.
Go ahead, Rooney.
I was going to say, are you still upset we played Navy this year?
I am upset we played Navy. And if you want to read the article, check it out in Scholastic.
Quick plug for Scholastic.
All around campus and online, scholastic.indy.edu. Why we should stop playing the Naval Academy. But the game's over. I was very pleased with the win. The first half really carried them throughout the whole game. 27-0 going into halftime. They could really just turn on cruise control and cruise to the rest of the game. Navy made some good adjustments in the second half, I thought. But all in all, control from start to finish, barring that first possession.
Rooney, what'd you think of the game last Saturday?
I thought Ian Book played really well yet again. You talk about completion percentage. He was 27 for 33. It doesn't get much better than that. He's been very consistent. He has thrown a couple more picks over the past 2 weeks. He had another interception this past week. I'd like him to limit that moving forward. But still, it doesn't get much better than 27 for 33.
Yeah, that interception was bad.
It wasn't good.
It was not, I wouldn't even want to say it was good coverage. I think it was just he stared his receiver down the whole time and didn't see the safety spying over the middle and threw it right to him.
Yeah, but I will say Ian Book came into the game with a 75.2% completion percentage, and that went up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, he's now at 76.5%, 27 to 33, as you mentioned. And this kid can distribute the football extremely well.
And he's the first quarterback since Russell Wilson to win his first 5 starts and complete 70% of his passes. And he's currently 0.2 percentage points away from tying Colt McCoy's NCAA record for completion percentage in a season.
Wait, hey, quick question. Is that good?
By my opinion, my unprofessional Shamrock Sports opinion, yeah, that's pretty good.
This is not an analytics-driven show, but that was some pretty good stuff from the mathematician here. You got anything to counter that?
No, I think he's one of the best quarterbacks right now in college football.
It was a dominant first half, as you both mentioned, 27-0. What was most impressive, though, was not the offense, was the defense. Held Navy to just 2 first downs in the first half. When was the last time that has happened? I mean, they could not do anything on offense.
Yeah, 70 rush yards on just 21 carries in the first half, and that's against a team like Navy, who every drive is it's 4-down territory from start to finish. They're rarely going to punt the football, and Notre Dame made them punt at least 3 times in the first half, if not more. And just 70 rush yards in the first half. As you said, 2 first downs. The defense. And it looked like Alohi Gilman, the Navy transfer, was single-handedly stopping that Navy team on the first couple
Made that
drives.
big stop on the first series on 4th down, stopped the quarterback sneak from getting the first down. So he was clearly a huge help for the Irish defense because he knew exactly what was coming. And this was a game that he played with a lot of extra juice, too.
He did. I mean, again, transferring from Navy to Notre Dame, that's a big deal for him. With when he came in, he did not know he would have to fulfill his Navy service. He thought he could go to the NFL afterwards, after that first
Well, they
game.
changed the rule.
Exactly.
Right?
After
So
his
Keenan
freshman
Reynolds,
year.
I think, was the last year, so he's the rare exception.
That's right. So that's why he ended up transferring to Notre Dame. No hard feelings between the players there, but still it shows Notre Dame had a lot of preparation for this game. We talked about they had that entire practice squad dedicated to running the triple option. Notre Dame clearly prepared for it. They looked great defensively.
Last week in college football, Caroline Pineda spent the entire weekend, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., watching every game, and she has the recap for you.
I'm Caroline Pineda, and here's what happened in college football this week. Number 2, Clemson went down south to Tallahassee to take on Florida State, beating the Seminoles 59-10 and handing them their worst home loss in program history. Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence found Amari Rodgers, and Rodgers did the rest on this 58-yard touchdown pass to go up 35-0 early in the third quarter. Lawrence finished the night with 314 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. They will face a 2-6 Louisville squad this week. In an SEC Top 10 matchup, number 7 Georgia beat number 9 Florida 36-17. Jake Fromm connected with receiver Terry Godwin on this 24-yard touchdown pass to go up 29-17 in the fourth quarter. Fromm finished the night with 240 passing yards to quell any quarterback dispute that was brewing among the Bulldogs. Syracuse beat number 22 NC State 51-41 this week to jump into the rankings at number 22. Northwestern took an 11-point lead early in the second half and never looked back on their way to this 31-17 upset over number 20 Wisconsin. While Notre Dame takes on Northwestern, number 14 Penn State will travel to number 5 Michigan in a top 15 matchup. The number 1 and the number 4 teams are both coming off byes this week. Number 1 Alabama and number 4 LSU will face off on Saturday night. Number 6 Georgia will travel to number 11 Kentucky in a matchup that will decide the SEC East. That's what happened in college football this week. I'm Caroline Pineda. Let's get back to talking about the Irish.
Looks like Caroline forgot to watch the college football playoff show on Tuesday. LSU jumped the Irish at number 3.
In her defense, I made her film that segment like a couple hours before the playoff rankings came out.
So it's your fault.
It was my fault.
But LSU is number 3. Top 4 looks like this: Alabama, Clemson, LSU, and Notre Dame. Alabama LSU obviously is the marquee game of the weekend. That'll be kicking off just shortly after the Notre Dame and Northwestern, which kicks off at 6:15 on ESPN Central Time. And then Alabama LSU, I think, is an 8 o'clock kickoff on CBS Eastern Time. So that's the game of the week to watch. And everyone is, especially you were up in arms about LSU jumping Notre Dame.
Yeah, I didn't think it was fair. I thought Notre Dame undefeated right now. They've had a number of quality wins, even though, Stanford's not ranked anymore, Virginia Tech's not ranked. At the time, these were top 25 teams, and Stanford was a top 10 team, and Notre Dame probably has the best win in all of college football right now over Michigan. No one else has a win over a top 5 team that's ranked up there. So that's why I think...
But in fairness to LSU, they have a win over Georgia, who's number 6.
They do, but Notre Dame's undefeated, and LSU has 1 loss. So... Again, if you're looking at quality wins, Notre Dame has the quality wins. They have Michigan. LSU has Georgia. So if you, let's say, cross those out, you say they're even. Well, Notre Dame doesn't have a loss, and LSU does. So that's why I say Notre Dame should be higher. I thought Notre Dame should have jumped Clemson. Clemson has no quality wins. They're undefeated as well. But I think that Notre Dame's resume is significantly more impressive than Clemson's, and it is slightly more impressive than LSU's.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with him, actually. However, I'm not going to be up in arms about it because I don't think it matters.
At the end of the day, you're right.
I do agree with you that I think that Notre Dame does have a better resume than LSU, and at undefeated, I think they should be above a 1-loss LSU team. And I think that there is a case to make that they could be above Clemson. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of football to be played. There's November to be played, which is the toughest month in college football. And Alabama, LSU, whether that was a 1 versus 4 or a 1 versus 3 game, one of those teams has to lose.
That's going to settle a lot.
Exactly. One of those teams has to lose.
I think maybe not, though. If LSU wins this game, how far does Alabama fall? That's another question. I would guess they'd fall behind Notre Dame, but you just don't
Probably
know.
not very far, but what does that do to the SEC? That means both Alabama and LSU cannot lose the rest of the way, and that's not going to happen.
I think that the rankings in the ensuing weeks are more important as we get closer to conference championship week. I think that that's when the rankings become more important because if Notre Dame is still sitting at 4 come the USC week, or worse, if they're at 4 after USC heading into the conference championship week, Notre Dame is not in a very good position, I think, because the committee is going to be sitting there watching every other playoff caliber team play on championship week, and Notre Dame is not. So if Notre Dame is on the fringe,
well, how would they be 4? So what scenario do they have them at 4? I mean,
I don't have a specific scenario in mind. I'm just saying that if they're at 4 after the USC week,
if Alabama wins this week, then LSU's out. Notre Dame's at 3. If LSU wins this week, then I would have a hard time believing Alabama's ahead of Notre Dame. So I don't see a scenario.
Alabama, LSU, Georgia. those two of those teams are going to lose at least
Kentucky.
one more time before the season ends,
I
right?
agree, exactly. So I don't see any way in which you
Kentucky.
have two SEC teams, you have ACC, and then you have the Big Ten championship. I don't think there's any scenario in which those four teams get in if Notre Dame's undefeated.
So you mentioned Kentucky. That's also a big game. Kentucky and Georgia, winner of that game will play in the SEC championship game. Who would have thought that would have been the situation at the beginning of the season? But let's say Kentucky pulls this off. Georgia's eliminated from the playoff conversation.
That could be one of the best things for Notre Dame, I think.
It could be.
That the more that you limit the amount of teams from the SEC that are in contention for the college football playoff, the better it is for a team like Notre Dame who doesn't have a conference championship.
Yep.
I agree with you again, Austin. I think that an undefeated Notre Dame will not and cannot be left out of the college football playoff with the current system. However, the amount of teams that are competitive right now for the college football playoff, which currently sits at 10, I would say, the top 10 are all competitive, then I think that Notre Dame wants to put itself in the best position possible, and the way that they do that is thanks to chaos in the SEC.
It helps.
Two conferences are going to be left out if the Irish are going to make the playoff. And with the strength of the SEC, there's a chance that 3 Power 5 conferences could be left out too. Which conferences do not make the playoff? Now, I understand we're a long way away. The final rankings are December 2nd. But at this point right now, who does not make it if an undefeated Notre Dame is in?
Well, I think there are two conferences that are definitely in. There's no doubt about the SEC, and there's no doubt about the ACC. As long as Clemson wins out, that is. If Clemson wins out,
Clemson is carrying the weight for the entire ACC.
they are. If Clemson's
they
out,
can't screw up
that's
the rest of the year.
But they don't have a tough test the rest of the year. I mean, if
I
they
would
get to
argue-
unless the ACC championship comes around, they play Virginia Tech. They play.
They've stumbled in past
NC
years
State.
against far inferior opponents. I would argue the Big Ten probably is more of a lock in the playoff than the ACC is.
I think, well, that's probably right at this point because as long as you have a one-loss Michigan State or Michigan, or you have a one-loss Ohio State, that team would get in theory. But then again, you have to look at where does Notre Dame stand, where does Alabama stand. I think the loser of LSU and Alabama will be important in determining one of those teams can get in. Could Kentucky get in? That's another possibility. Those are teams you have to take a look at for sure.
Bottom line is, this is all going to settle itself out in the next few weeks.
But that doesn't mean it's not fun to yell at each other about
it's a ton of fun, and there have only been 3 undefeated teams in the history of the college football playoff. So, and last year there were no undefeated teams, and Alabama was the last team in, and they ended up winning the national title. So, things are going to work themselves out, but the bottom line is, if Notre Dame wants to be in, they just have to win.
There is no conceivable way, in my opinion, that they get in with one loss. I just don't see it.
No conceivable way.
Almost
That's a pretty
none.
strong statement.
I could conceive of a way, but it involves a lot of chaos.
It
Right.
involves a lot of chaos, and with the amount of good SEC teams, and with the amount of good Big Ten teams, and the amount of and Clemson, if they stay undefeated, I find it nearly impossible that Notre Dame loses a game and they still end up in.
This is a big month for the Irish. November has not been kind to Notre Dame. They are 1-8 against Power 5 teams on the road during the past 5 Novembers. That is not good.
And we talked about, I said it in the open, Notre Dame has had 2 undefeated Novembers under Brian Kelly. One has an asterisk mark next to it because it was 2012 and it's technically vacated. And the other was in 2010, which was Brian Kelly's first season in which he went 8-5. So years in which Notre Dame has been a contender, 2012 is the only season that he's really had a good November. You look back, 2014, after they suffered that loss to Clemson, Notre Dame was still in the conversation for the playoff, it was 2015. They played Northwestern, and the wheels really came off after that loss to Northwestern.
Yep.
And just the way everything that went wrong in that game, I look to this game this next week, and it's going to be very, very tough for the Irish.
I'm not quite sure. I don't see it as quite as tough this week for Notre Dame. We're going to get into that, I'm sure, a little bit later. But I do think that these games are going to be crucial down the stretch. It is an easier schedule than what Notre Dame has seen thus far, but that doesn't mean by any means it's an easy schedule.
A lot of travel, too, over 8,000 miles. Notre Dame, starting last week with the trip to San Diego, is going to travel during their last 5 games, now last 4 games, to end the season. Of course, the Shamrock Series game at Yankee Stadium, and then they end the season against a struggling USC team, 4-4 USC team. Syracuse might be the toughest game left on the schedule. That's a 19th ranked Syracuse team that scores a lot of points. We'll get to that in a little bit. And let's shift our conversation now to the game on Saturday in Evanston. And to get us started, we got Ellen Geyer, who has our 3 keys to the game.
I'm Ellen Geyer, and these are 3 keys to this week's game. One, Notre Dame needs a solid performance from both its safeties and its defensive backfield. Last week against Navy, the safeties struggled to find the right angles on their tackles and shake off downfield blocks. Additionally, the cornerbacks had trouble covering the receivers. The leading Wildcat receiver has 711 yards on the season, and their next 2 highest receivers have over 300. Because the Northwestern offense relies so heavily on the passing game, the Notre Dame defense will need to have a solid performance from both their safeties and their cornerbacks. 2. Ian Book needs to continue to improve his long passing game. Last week against Navy, Ian Book averaged 10 yards per attempt, which is 2 yards higher than his current average. He also had an impressive 22-yard touchdown pass to Miles Boykin. Ian Book will need to continue to keep his completion rate high because the Irish will need both the rushing and the passing game for the rest of the season. 3. Notre Dame needs to play a complete game. We've said it before and we'll say it again. The Irish need to play strong for 4 quarters. Last week, the Irish were able to recover from their first fumble on the first drive. They then went on to score on 4 of their 5 drives in the first half. The second half performance wasn't as impressive. They were only able to notch points on 3 out of their 6 offensive attempts. The Northwestern team the Irish are facing is on a 4-game win streak, and last week they posted an impressive win against then 20th ranked Wisconsin. It should also be noted that the Wildcats missed the AP poll by only 2 spots and lost to Michigan by only 3 points. The Irish will need a good showing from their whole team for 4 quarters in Evanston this week if they hope to come out on top against Northwestern. I'm Ellen Geyer, and that's 3 keys to this week's game.
Hey, don't sleep on the Wildcats. This Northwestern team started the year 1-3, but have since rattled off 4 straight wins against Michigan State, Nebraska, Rutgers, and last week probably their most impressive win at home against a ranked Wisconsin team. This is a good football team, and they're playing at a high level the past few weeks.
A team that's currently on pace to win the Big Ten West,
Yeah.
a team that could be a Big Ten champion if they win the Big Ten championship. So this is not a team to be overlooked for Notre Dame, despite the very close trip and the large Notre Dame contingent in Chicago.
Yeah, I still think Notre Dame is pretty heavily favored. I know there are a lot of prediction websites that are giving Notre Dame just a 70% chance, Northwestern 35% chance of winning this game. I don't see it that way. I think Notre Dame is still definitely the team that should be favored to win this game, and probably by a somewhat significant margin. There are a lot of quality pieces on this Northwestern team, but at the end of the day, Notre Dame is that much more talented, and although they're playing on the road, it's not that far of a trip. There's going to be, I would guess, as much of a 50-50 crowd presence for both teams.
That might be true. It's a 48,000-seat stadium there in Evanston. There are high school stadiums in Texas that hold more seats than Ryan Field in Evanston. So I do agree that there probably will be a huge Notre Dame contingent there. As you mentioned, Northwestern controls their own destiny in the Big Ten.
This game doesn't affect their destiny in the Big Ten either. So this is a chance for them to go out and take a punch at one of the big shots and say, hey, you know what? We could win the Big Ten and have a marquee win on our resume.
They have a 46% chance to win the Big Ten according to ESPN. And you're right. They will play like they have nothing to lose because they don't have anything to lose. They're not in the playoff conversation, and this does not affect their chances to get to the Rose Bowl whatsoever.
It doesn't, and also if you look at their previous matchups against Michigan, number 5 team in the country, they nearly beat them back early in the season. So this is a team that can compete. There's no doubt about it. But when I look at their offense, you know, Clayton Thorson, he's a good quarterback. He's not great. You look at his touchdowns to interceptions ratio, 10 interceptions, 10 touchdowns. That's not great. And you look at the running back situation. The running back situation is a little better, especially in the last 2 weeks with Isaiah Bauer, but still, this is not a great offense I'm seeing from Northwestern.
Yeah, they're 105th in the S&P Plus statistical metric. Not a good offense, and I think that Notre Dame's defense is just so good that they're going to suffocate the Wildcats. I think that the big matchup goes on the other side of the football. How will Notre Dame's offense, a team ranked in the high 30s in S&P Plus, go up against the 28th best defense in the country in Northwestern? Northwestern has a lot of really good pieces on this defense. You've got Joe Gaziano and Patty Fisher rushing the quarterback. Ian Book not very good when he's under pressure. We saw that against Pitt, and the offensive line did a much better job against Navy. The offensive line is going to have to protect Ian Book against guys like that. And then you've got Montre Hardage, one of the best corners in the country. He's getting NFL looks. So the passing game might not be there for Notre Dame, especially early, so they're going to have to establish the run game like they did last week. With Jafar back healthy, the Dexter Williams-Jafar Armstrong duo, I think, was very successful. 4 touchdowns, nearly 200 yards on the ground. That's what we need to see from the Irish against Northwestern, is a strong running game supplemented by a passing game in Ian Book.
Dexter Williams last week had a 3-touchdown game, his second 3-touchdown game of the year, and Northwestern's run defense is not great. 75th nationally, allowing 4.31 yards per rush.
They're not a great rushing defense. Again, their passing defense is 57th as well. Depending on which metrics you're looking at, total yards, I believe they're the 49th best defense in the country. So it's okay. It's not great. S&P Plus is a more of an advanced statistic you're looking at in that metric. But as far as Notre Dame goes, Dexter Williams, he has rushed for 140-plus yards in 3 of his 4 games he's played for Notre Dame. Ian Book, a 76% completion percentage. There are not too many worries I have for Notre Dame. Sure, it is possible that Dexter Williams gets shut down the same way he did 2 weeks ago. But if that happens, I am not worried, because I think that Ian Book is somebody who can put up 300-plus yards because he has such a good completion percentage. He can make those check down throws and get first downs when Notre Dame needs to.
I think the key for Northwestern in this game is to put pressure on Ian Book and rely on your run defense. Like you said, their run defense does have a possibility of stifling Armstrong and Williams. So if this game is left in the hands of Ian Book and you're Northwestern, you got to hope that you put pressure on him and he makes mistakes like he has the past couple weeks. Because if he makes throws like he did on that interception against Navy and that interception against Virginia Tech.
He's still only had 4 interceptions this year, though.
Right, but those interceptions haven't, and he had 2 against Pittsburgh.
One of those was not his fault.
Right, but 3 of those interceptions were bad decision making.
They've been ugly, yeah.
And so I think that if Ian Book's decision making gets called into question, then Northwestern has a shot at this game. But I think that they're not going to be able to get things going on the offensive end. They haven't even averaged 4 yards per carry in a single game this season. I highly doubt that they're going to be able to be mobile against a very stout Notre Dame defensive front with ends like Julian Okwara, Khalid Kareem, who seem darn near unblockable this season.
And Notre Dame will be without tight end Alize Mack this weekend, as you mentioned, got injured with a concussion in the Navy game, so he'll be out. Drew Tranquil is questionable. Coach Kelly said yesterday that he practiced, and they're going to see how he feels today. I'm going to say that they'll probably err on not playing Drew Tranquil if his ankle's a little gimpy.
And he's still got a broken hand.
Right.
So,
yeah.
There's a lot going on with Drew Tranquil.
Right. He's been playing with the cast. We talked about the November woes. How do the Irish ditch those demons? I mean, this month has been kryptonite for Notre Dame, but you can taste the college football playoff. It is right there. 4 games left against opponents that they should beat. How do they make it happen?
I think it's consistency. I think that's it. If they can play consistently offensively, they can put up yards from Ian Book, if he can continue to throw touchdown passes, and if they can incorporate the run game effectively, they will have no problem, because there is not a single game on the schedule that if Notre Dame plays well, they lose. If they have bad games, it's possible. We saw them have a very bad game versus Pittsburgh. They played that way versus Northwestern, possibly versus Syracuse, maybe versus even USC. Those are games Notre Dame could lose. But if they play well the way they did versus Navy, the way they played for the majority of this season, they will have no problem getting into the college football playoff. So again, one word: consistency.
I think on top of that consistency piece, it needs to be not consistent week to week, but consistent from the first snap of the game to the last. They struggle with playing all 4 quarters, and we've talked about this many times on Shamrock Sports. But you look at the Navy game, 27-0 in the first half, just 70 rushing yards for Navy against a team that is going to get their yards. They're going to run the football, and there's not a lot you can do to stop
There's
that.
no way that first half was going to continue forever.
Of course, but Notre Dame got outscored in the second half. I believe they were outgained in the second half by Navy as well. They have to play hard from start to finish. They can't have any lapses in concentration that let these teams back into it. Because if these teams are down 27-0 at halftime, but then in the second half they're given a shot, some of these teams are more capable of taking that shot. Look at Syracuse in New York. Look at Northwestern tomorrow. I think that those are teams that if you give them a shot, they're going to take it. And so Notre Dame has to put these teams away and play from start to finish every game. Take it one game at a time and take care of business. And that's how you win in November.
Everyone is talking about the upset. Everyone. You listen to every national radio show, talk show, whatever. It's Notre Dame is on upset alert against Northwestern. How much stock do you put into that the players are going to be aware of all that chatter and try and play with more of an edge?
Yeah, I think this team is ready for Northwestern. They look at the rest of the schedule, and there is no game they're saying, okay, we're looking ahead to X game on the schedule. That doesn't exist. I think that plays a role because, if you have, a number 3 team on the schedule in 3 weeks, you may be saying, well, we're preparing for that game specifically. Notre Dame doesn't have that. So they can go week to week and put a ton of focus on each and every game. They're not looking past Northwestern. They know this is a big game. They know people are saying they're on upset alert. Notre Dame is a significantly more talented team than Northwestern. They have played better than Northwestern all season long. I do not put much stock in this upset alert at all.
That's interesting. Northwestern is a very disciplined football team, by the way. Averaged 3.25 penalties per game. Pat Fitzgerald at the helm of this program, who was a linebacker at Northwestern when Northwestern beat the Irish in 1995. Those are the last 2 meetings, 2014, 1995. 2014, everyone remembers, as you say, the wheels were falling off the bus. Cam McDaniel, his first fumble of the season when Notre Dame's trying to run out the clock. Northwestern ends up kicking a game-tying field goal with 16 seconds left, and then they won in overtime, 43-40. But Notre Dame does own the edge in this series, to be sure, 37-9-2. But the Wildcats have won the last 2, 95 and 2014.
If you get caught up in this, Notre Dame is unbeatable. They're 8-0 and 12-0 is a certainty. Believe me, I want to be in that camp. But if you watch the highlights from 2014, they're very sobering.
Yeah.
A kicker for Northwestern who had never hit a 30-yard more than a 30-yard field goal in his college career, he hit 3 of them that night. Cam McDaniel, who was one of the most sure-handed running backs in college football, his first fumble of the season.
When they're trying to run out the clock.
When they're trying to run out the clock and win that game. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in November, and that was in South Bend.
Right.
And so Notre Dame has to be super hyper-focused for these games in November because they have to take care of business. Their destiny, their college football playoff is within their reach. But it's all in their hands, but they have to take care of business on their end.
Here's one metric that is favorable for the Irish: 12-0 against Northwestern when Notre Dame is in the top 5.
It's good news. Notre Dame's playing well right now. Again, they're a top 5 team, as you mentioned, ranked 4th in the country, and there's a reason they're in the top 5. It's because they played well all season long. Notre Dame should be focused for that game. It shouldn't be a huge worry for Notre Dame fans.
All right. Well, with all that said, and we've thrown all the stats, metrics, numbers out there, time to get the prediction. Rooney, what do you think?
I've got 27-10.
27-10? Rather low-scoring game.
Yeah.
I'm going to tend to agree with you. I think that this game will be lower scoring than Notre Dame's last couple of contests. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to put up 40-something points like they have been able to under Ian Book. Guys, if you're listening, I'm more than happy if you do. But I think that Northwestern's defense is very stout. Notre Dame's defense is just better. So I think we're going to look at something along the lines of 24-28 points for the Irish, and I don't think that Northwestern even cracks double digits. I think it's going to be something along the lines of 24-7.
So Notre Dame moves to 9-0 for both of you.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we hope so. We got more sports going on this weekend, too. It's not just the football team in action, but Rooney, the Irish Icers are out there.
Yeah, that's right. Notre Dame is currently ranked 5th in the country. They had a pair of tough losses last weekend versus Minnesota Duluth, who was ranked number 2 in the country at the time. Duluth is now ranked number 1 in the country. So Notre Dame is facing off against the Ohio State University this weekend. Big time matchup.
Yeah,
First
that
Big Ten
is.
matchup of the season. That's over at Compton Family Ice Arena. You can check that out tonight at 7:30, tomorrow night at 7 p.m.
Men's basketball team also starting their season, men's and women's. They just had a scrimmage last night.
Yeah.
And then they will start their season officially on what day?
6th, on Tuesday.
The 6th, next Tuesday. And then, who's that team they're playing on Tuesday?
Is
USC.
Illinois, Chicago, right?
Illinois, Chicago?
Yeah, they're actually favored. I heard they're favored to lose that game. Illinois, Chicago is a really good team, actually. They beat Loyola Chicago by 20. That's the team that made it to the Final Four, if you remember. They beat them by 20 before the tournament.
Okay, transitive property, you got Illinois, Loyola, Notre Dame.
I guess Notre Dame football's not the only
favored.
team that's going to have to be focused this week. You also look at the women's basketball team. You're defending national champions. They're going to begin their season. They won their first exhibition game on Tuesday night. A lot of sports coming around, and you're used to listening to Shamrock Sports talk about football and football only. We're going to be expanding the show. It'll be a little bit longer, so you're going to have to put up with us and Duncan for a little bit longer. We're going to be talking about men's basketball, women's basketball, hockey. We're going to be talking about Notre Dame football team as that season wraps up. Lots of sports to be covered here on Shamrock Sports, and we'll have it all. I'll have all the coverage for you. But it's a very exciting time. It's one of my favorite times of the year when football and basketball overlap. There's Notre Dame sports to go around. Hockey's a very competitive team looking to repeat as Big Ten champions. So many Notre Dame sports going around. I'm very excited.
Looking forward to talking about those as well. It's a big weekend. Notre Dame and Northwestern Saturday, tomorrow at 6:15 in Evanston. The Irish going for 9-0. And you can catch that game on ESPN. Thanks for watching Shamrock Sports, everyone. Have a great day. All night, babe, make me wanna say, la, la, la,